Uh, uh, Good evening, everyone. Shall we begin the session now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just a minute. Dear participant, very good evening, and we are happy to welcome each one of you for our 371st webinar session. Today with us, Mr. Vivian, sir. He is an assistant professor of psychology, Madras School of Social Work, Chennai. And this topic is a very unique one. The parents to partners, a role change. Actually, it is an interesting one for even when you look at the title itself. I think same kind of feeling you also may have when you read the title. I welcome today's resource person, Mr. Vivian, sir, as well as that my core team members and faculties and participants on behalf of the Department of Psychology, American College, Madurai, Madras School of Social Work, Chennai, M.H. Chalamuthi Institute, Madurai, Yellow Pond Counseling Center, Madurai, and Red Pond Education Psychology Research Center. I welcome each one of you for today's webinar session. To introduce further about that resource person, now I request Dr. Chandra, the core team member, and the director of Red Pond Education Research Center will introduce the speaker. Over to you. Over to you, Dr. Chandra.
Thank you, sir. I'm very happy to introduce the speaker today, Mr. Vivian. He is currently working as an assistant professor at Madras School of Social Work, Chennai, and he's also pursuing his PhD in applied psychology. So he is the alumni of Laila College, Chennai, and also the University of Madras. So he has been a part of the UGC research project on construction, validation, and standardization of battery of intelligence test based on Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. He has also published his papers on multitasking, and he has got an additional qualification of his advanced diploma in network engineering, and also he's a postgraduate diploma in HRM. So he has also had his internships at Ramco Siemens and Wapco India Private Limited. Sir, we welcome you very much for today's session, and we are very much eagerly looking forward to hearing you the role shift from parents to partners. Thank you so much for being here, and now the session is over to you.
Yes, thank you. So on the onset, I would actually like to thank the organizing team for actually inviting me for this talk. So when I was actually thinking about what topic to talk about, so considering we all know that adolescence is a vulnerable phase of life of development. So I thought, why not do it on that? Okay, so the topic will be focused on adolescent development and the role of parents in that. Okay, so once again, I thank the organizing team for actually having me here. So I'd like to move into the topic. Yeah. So is the screen visible to everyone?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yeah. Okay, so as introduced, I am currently working as an assistant professor in Department of Counseling Psychology, MSSW. So first, I would like to start my presentation with a quote. Okay, one of the main tasks of adolescence is to achieve an identity, not to necessarily have a knowledge of who we are, but a clarification of the range of what we might become, a set of self-reference by which we can make sense of our responses and justify our decisions and goals. So in this quote itself, you can see that the life task of an adolescent is not just to gain who you are, but what we can become. Okay, it's not very fixed, but fluid in nature. Okay, so what all we can become, what are our potentials, what all can we achieve through our life course. Okay, so that is the life task of an adolescent. Okay, so now moving into the topic, right? So understanding childhood, I would like to first give a precursor about childhood. So when we talk about childhood, what are the things which come to your mind? I would actually like a participative session where people respond. So what are the things which come to your mind when we talk about childhood, from infancy to the age of 10 maybe? Pardon, ma'am? Innocence.
Selflessness.
Selflessness.
Fun.
Naughtiness. Okay. Anything else which comes to your mind when we talk about children?
No fear.
No fear, yes.
Abundance of curiosity.
Very true. Because curiosity seems to be the nature of children, right? Uh, when we talk about ourselves as adults, right? How many of us are actually curious in nature, as supposed when we were in childhood, right? How curious are we, or what changed in that time, right? So a child's brain is innately curious in nature. Okay, so life task of a childhood basically it is divided into motor functions, right? Gross movements, fine motor movements, right? Thumb sucking, grabbing objects and things like that, right? And making basic sounds, right? We are talking from infancy to childhood. So making sounds, understanding vocabulary, okay, taking care of themselves, right? And as we further develop, okay, during childhood, uh, yeah. So when we are talking about this, okay, so as children develop, okay, they also understand, social interactions, basic semantics, and all this. But a few things which actually we need to understand when we talk about childhood, because these have a telling impact on how we develop throughout our life, right? As we said, a child's mind is curious in nature, and uh, the neural plasticity of a child's brain is actually high. So for them to learn new concepts, okay, or develop, it's easier for them. Okay, so if we are to moving on, the few things which we actually have to keep in mind is the child's brain amygdala is actually active. Amygdala is the emotion center of our brain. Okay, so predominantly when we talk about children, okay, they are very egocentric, right? So anything and everything they understand from an emotional perspective, or more precisely, it is more of an effect, a positive or a negative effect, whether it is favorable or unfavorable to them. So that is why children are actually very keenly tuned to emotions. Okay, so any emotions given by the parents or exhibited by the parents is easily perceived by the child. So this is one reason why children who grew up in families with a lot of marital dysfunction are actually prone to a lot of problems later on in life, because in the early stages of life they are tuned to a lot of negative emotions, right? And the second thing is egocentric behavior. When we talk about children, how many of you have seen children saying, this is mine, you have to talk to me only, right? This is my friend. How many of you have seen this in kindergarten or with your neighbors kids, your kids themselves?
Yeah, I have actually. I have a kind of a nephew, and so my mother used to go and tell him that this is my son, my deep, and then he will also say my son. So he
Yeah,
doesn't know the meaning, but he's like, I think it's a kind of possessiveness or something.
yeah. So for them, everything and anything is actually centered around them. Okay, so any material possession or a person, the importance has to be on them. Okay, so they want that spotlight. Okay, because they are innately like that. Okay, they don't understand the concept of social relationships, or they don't understand the perspective of others, to be exact. So everything is focused on them. That's why they are egocentric in nature. That means everything revolves around them, right? So, and the interpretation of environment is direct cause and effect. Okay, they don't understand abstractions. They don't understand the concept of delayed gratifications also. That is why for them anything and everything is immediate. If they want a chocolate, they want it immediately, right? They want a hug or a kiss from the mother, they want it immediately, right? They don't understand the concept of delayed gratifications or the social cues which go along with this process. Okay, so that is why their interpretation of the environment is direct cause and effect. And the key part is the synaptic pruning. Okay, most of us may not be familiar with this concept, but during childhood, the brain has a way of development, right? So in this process of development, we will notice that the brain actually has a way of optimizing its functioning, right? So when the neural networks are kept on use, right, any neural network, for example, if you're giving the environmental stimulus is more intriguing nature or promotes curiosity, okay, the neural pathways associated with that are strengthened, okay, and any unused, okay, or less used neural pathways are actually pruned away. Okay, so the brain actually increases its efficiency to particularly tuned functions. That is why synaptic pruning in childhood is very crucial, because a childhood which a child which is reared in a very good environment or a stimulating environment where curiosity is actually promoted, okay, the neural pathways are developed greatly, whereas a child which is reared in an environment of fear, right, is actually strengthening the neural network of fear, and especially the fact that they work from their emotion centers more than their rational decision making centers, it makes it all the more difficult for them to change that pattern later on in life. So understanding synaptic pruning and how the child's mind develops is very crucial, especially when we are actually talking about transitioning from childhood to adolescence. Okay, the neural plasticity, as we said, humans' brain remain plastic all through their age. Only thing is, the rate in which it changes differs. The child's brain is actually malleable to a lot of change, so anything and everything we give is easily accepted. Only thing is, during later stages of life, we might have to put in a little more effort to make that change. So, any doubts, whatever you guys have as of now, whatever I've covered?
I hope you don't mind, but could you go back to synaptic pruning again?
Yeah. So synaptic pruning is basically how our neural networks are strengthened, right? Basically, our brains has a bunch of neurons. Okay. So the unused neurons or less frequently used neuron synapses are actually trimmed. Okay. So the connection going through that pathways are less. Okay. So basically, anything you keep using is developed, and one which is not used is forgotten. Decay through disuse. That is the synaptic pruning process.
Thank you, sir. I understand now.
Yeah. So moving on. Okay. What are the things which come to your mind when we talk about parenting in our context in India, right? May it be north or south, but generally we have a template, right? In India, these are the common practices. So, what are the practices you can think of? Okay, discipline. Anything else? What else can you think of when you talk about parenting in India?
I think we expect a lot from kids.
Can you elaborate on that a little more, ma'am?
Because I think every kid is special in their own way.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
instead of understanding their potential of what they could, we try to insist our wishes in them and, force them to do what they even don't like.
Yes, that's very true. Anything else? Common practices which we see in our culture. Control.
I think it's more authoritative
elaborate the
parenting.
question, sir? Because
Pardon?
practices is quite wider. Can you please elaborate your question?
Yes, ma'am. When we talk about parenting in India, there will be broad clusters of behaviors, right? Behaviors or statements which we frequently hear, right? A template as to what parenting is, right?
Okay,
So,
I
what are
got
the
it. I
things
got
which,
it.
yeah,
So it is about comparing with other children.
comparison, yes.
I think maybe it's more of an authoritative parenting that we find in India.
Authoritative or authoritarian?
No, authoritative. Sorry, wait. I think, yeah, authoritarian. I'm sorry. I can correct myself. Authoritarian. Yeah.
Okay. So, the things, children will look after the parents when they are old. Yes. In a collectivistic society, okay, predominantly in the East, okay, whether it is Chinese culture or Indian culture, our life system is basically devised on an internal cycle of death. That means the parents sacrifice for the children and the children, when they grow up, they sacrifice for their parents. So it's a cycle or a loop which keeps working. Okay, so the question why I ask this is, we have something called as a cultural script. Okay, basically the templates which we were talking about so far, okay, all those templates put together form a cultural script of basically what parenting is in India. So here are a few cultural scripts which are predominantly seen in most Indian families. Okay, I can say it's most, but not all. So yes, the cultural scripts in India, okay, pregnancy and childbirth are seen as a social obligation, right? If you see in India, predominantly you'll notice that uh, a girl has to be married by the age of 22, a boy has to be married by the age of 26, 28 at the max, right? Beyond that, you are literally out of the marital market. That's how the society sees, right? People above the age of 30 are literally seen as deviants from the norms, because in India we have a timetable for everything, right? So childbirth is also seen as a social obligation. Once you're married, the next step is you have to have a child, preferably within 1 year of marriage, right? So it is actually a social obligation which drives this process of childbirth itself. Okay, so the mentality of people getting involved in the process, the parents' mindset, how it is also matters. Okay, and independence of child is very specific. As we said, we want our child to be unique and be the maximum they can be, but at the same time you will see that there is a lot of comparison, and the independence which we give the child is very specific, right? If the child, for example, if the child doesn't want to go to the grandparents, okay, how many of you will say it is okay to not go to the grandparents? A small child, maybe of 5 or 6 years age, right? How many of us will agree to that? If the child says, I don't want to meet the grandparents, how many of us will agree to that? Yes, we have one response from the chat. Anyone else? How many of you will agree to it? Right? Because in our cultural context, if we see that, convince them to go, yes. In our cultural context, anything with elders is non-negotiable. Okay, whether it is justifying ourselves, if the child wants to justify itself, if we as adults want to justify ourselves to our parents or our grandparents, we still feel hesitant, right? So that kind of things, okay, it is very situational. The independence which we offer them is very specific and situational. Okay, so the true uniqueness of a child is actually not brought out in the process. Though we wanted to, our practices are actually conveying the exact opposite of it. Okay, and when it comes to development, we see them as something to be directly involved in. Okay, for example, let's see. Yeah, deterministic approach in the sense, parents don't allow the children to explore, right? Parents typically direct kids to how they can be or they cannot be, right? If a child wants to go play in the mud or maybe catch an earthworm, how many of you will be okay, open to it? Yeah, if the child wants to explore if you have the luxury of a garden, especially in a city like Chennai where everything is like a concrete jungle, if you have the luxury of a garden and your child wants to go catch insects, right, or go dig out earthworms from the ground, how many of us will be willing to do that, right? So we actually have a set pattern for such behaviors, okay, what a child should do and should not do. Okay, you will see this especially when they ask questions, right? The curiosity of a child is so immense, sometimes their questions astonish us, right? Sometimes we are not geared for the questions they ask. Okay, immediately if such questions arise, our response is predominantly, you do this because I say so. Okay, we talk to them from a point of power and not feeding their curiosity or kind of giving them a convincing reply, right? So deterministic approach towards development, right? We feel the child cannot make decisions for itself, so we make those decisions, micromanagement, right? And elective interdependence, right? Even in our current nuclear family context, the role of extended family is actually great in the process of child rearing. Though we have the distance physically between the families, the role still remains at large because uh, of technology or proximity. Okay, so things like that. Okay, and when we talk about collectivistic, right, it takes one village to raise a child. Okay, that's the mentality we follow, right? The child rearing process is not just isolated to the parents, but also to the extended family members and even the neighbors of the child. Okay, so now coming back to the topic of parenting, right? We have something called as parenting styles. How many of you are familiar with this word, parenting styles? Okay. So can someone just give me a gist of what parenting styles is? What is your understanding of parenting styles?
It might be a strict one,
Okay, strict.
or it may be a permissive one,
Yes.
or it might
Helicopter
be
parenting. Okay.
over tolerance.
Over tolerance. Okay, so now we will move on to the next part. So this is a small activity which I have. So I hope you guys don't mind. So if possible, in your phone or in in a piece of paper, write down a list of behaviors or statements parents make when we talk about children. Response to demands of children. Okay, so I want you to make a list of statements or behaviors which parents exhibit towards children. Okay, I will explain why we are doing this a little later. So can we move on with it, or do you guys need time to do this activity?
I think this should be interesting. We'll take a couple of minutes if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, we're just going to put in general, okay? Not necessarily it's me or someone. I'm just going to put in
Yes,
general
ma'am.
what we hear.
Yes, ma'am. You don't have to talk about it now, but later on during the course of the session, we will actually discuss it a little more in depth. So we can probably take around 2 minutes to do this.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I'd like to move on to the topic, so you guys can keep working on it in the background. Okay. So now, going on, adolescence as defined by WHO. It's a transitional phase, as we all know, right? But what are the problems? Why does adolescence have to be a turbulent phase? What goes wrong and where? Right? We have to identify that. So, what do you think goes wrong when we actually talk about adolescence or adolescence in general? Where does the problem arise?
Identity, sir.
Pardon?
Identity.
Yes,
When they are
identity.
trying to find their identity, yeah, establishing their identity.
Establishing identity, yes. Anything else?
So good evening, sir. There are a lot of physical changes in the body in terms
Yes,
of
ma'am.
hormonal imbalance, and at the time of puberty, at least. So at least from the transition from childhood to adolescent, so they have
Yes,
a
ma'am.
lot of problems because of that.
Yes, ma'am. So physiological changes, exploring identity. Anything else?
And I think expect the same like they were before adolescence, like we keep expecting to be a child even if they
Yeah.
grow age or something like that.
Yeah. We kind of keep the same expectations as what we did for them in childhood, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so one key problem area which actually arises here is yeah, okay, in most cases problems arise when parents transfer skills instead of transitioning from those skills, right? We as parents, when we are parents, we actually learn a set of skills when we are actually bringing up the child in during infancy to childhood, that is below 10. But what happens when they cross the age of 10 and enter puberty or teenage, right? Yeah, developing of child from child to adult, right? So the problem is the skills which we learn during the childhood will not be the same tools which we will be using during adolescence. Okay, that is why we have this quote here saying, if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail, right? So the only skill set which we have as parents when we are actually at least rearing the first child, okay, we tend to see the child, growing adolescent or an emerging adult from the same lens of a child. So the skill sets which we apply, okay, remain the same. That means we are still trying to direct an adolescent who wants to explore autonomy, right? That creates a mismatch, right, between expectations and reality. Okay, so that is one key area of deficiency which causes a lot of problem during the transition phase. And the second one is transferring of deficiencies and experiences from parents to child, right? In our cultural script, as we all said, if a parent is not able to become an engineer, you will see predominantly in most cases they want the child to become an engineer because they couldn't be one, right? The same goes with being a doctor, predominantly all professional courses. How many of you have actually come across these statements? I couldn't be this, so you have to be this. Or at least heard someone say that to a child or an adolescent, especially when they are choosing, their streams in 11th standard. That's one. Anyone else? Right? Okay. So this is actually a majority of experience, right? And this does not stop with, just education. Okay. If the parent is a good athlete, okay, which is a good thing, okay, they might expect the same thing from the child, right? I'm an athlete, so you have to be an athlete. I'm good at math, so you have to be good at math, right? So the individual capabilities of the child or the wants of the child are not actually taken into account, right? If the child wants to be an literature graduate and the parent is a mathematician, the parent expects the child to be a mathematician, but the interest of the child as a literature, okay, is not taken into account, right? These are the things wherein we actually have to give adolescents the autonomy to explore, right? And that doesn't happen necessarily, okay, not in all cases, but at least in most cases we see this happening. Okay, so now coming back to parenting, right? So parenting is predominantly divided into four categories based on the support they provide and the expectations they have. Okay, by expectations we do not talk about utopian expectations as to you have to be the director of NASA or anything of that sort. But reasonable expectations appropriate to the age, right? For example, for an adolescent to choose what they want to become, it's a reasonable expectation, right? And giving them the support to actually choose, okay, it's very important. So that is why we have authoritative, authoritarian, permissive, and neglectful parenting, right? All these are actually gauged based on the support and expectations placed on the child, right? So now coming back to the list which you guys prepared, I hope all of you have prepared something, or at least a few statements, 3 or 4 statements regarding parent and parenting behavior and statements. Yes. Yeah. So now, if you see, where can you place these statements which you have prepared? Right, you have a list ready with you. Where do you think you can place those? Okay, somewhere or the other, you will be able to place them in these 4, right? So can someone just tell me a few statements like that, where they have placed it in this graph?
Sir, in the first go, we have got some statements in the chat box. I think we
Yes,
should
ma'am.
consider them first, and then I can read mine, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Definitely, ma'am.
It is being said that I know better than you. That's one statement.
Yes, ma'am.
And after all we have done, you betrayed us.
Yes, ma'am.
You will suffer if you don't obey me.
Yeah, disobey me. You are under my control, under my roof. You are a disappointment. So where will we place these statements actually? In this graph, where can we place these?
I think it's mostly authoritarian.
Yes. Low support, high expectations. Yeah. So children these days are selfish. Yes. Children should be sincere. So anyone else wants to try this, where you actually place these behaviors in any of these quadrants? Just one more person, and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Good evening, sir.
On my side, I have just not the statements as such, sir. I have just listed out some observations that we have while talking to kids. So what I have just put is like we try to punish them right away, even if it's big or small, and we don't use a positive language to them. Sometimes we don't even call them by name, we just call by some animals or whatever, in Indian context, I mean.
Yes,
and we don't give some choices to them, like when we want them to do something, we just straight away want them to do that. And we keep telling many things at one stroke. Even the child don't understand what we are trying to tell them to do.
Information overload.
Yeah, and we don't want them to shout, but we yell at them. That is one thing. We don't model actually as a parent.
Yes, ma'am.
And we keep finding their faults only, but we don't take time to appreciate what nicer things they have done. And if they wanted to say something to us, we don't let them talk also. We just interrupt. Okay, come on. Okay, you did it and you have to do it, like.
Yes, ma'am.
And especially with siblings stuffs, that is something different. You are always biased towards one kid and you don't listen to the other, what they say, and you go for judgments. A lot of things, sir. Sorry, I'm a mother of 2, so I understand a lot of things in that, and I'm talking what I feel. It's a general context, sir. It's a general context. As I'm living in the UK now, I tend to learn a lot of different parenting style, which I have not observed. I don't say in India it is not there, but we have a lot of varieties, with the grandeur population, we have a lot of varieties there.
Yes,
but here the systems are different. Even I have not seen someone shouting or, beating the kid in public. I have never seen it. And kids crying in public also don't happen. I don't know what's happening inside, but these are the things that we don't
At least
observe.
in the external world, you don't see this.
Yeah, it is something like that.
Okay, ma'am.
So this is what I felt, sir, about what you were talking about.
Okay. So predominantly, if we see this, all these behaviors can be actually clustered into an authoritarian style of approach, right? How we interact with the child, wherein it's predominantly we talk from a position of power, right? When we talk from a position of power itself, the recipient shuts down, right? Even in our interactions as adults, if someone actually tries imposing their views or their opinions on us, we immediately shut down, right? Whether it is our workplace or anywhere, if someone tries to impose themselves on us, right, we shut down. The same thing goes along with kids, but it's even more sensitive because they are actually tuned to this. Okay, especially when we talk about adolescence, their prefrontal cortex, which is actually responsible for decision making, is actually still developing. So they still bank on emotions for events, right? So their decision making is predominantly emotion driven, and this actually complicates the process, right? For example, if you actually have two hotheads in the same discussion, the discussion will not go anywhere, right? If you have one person who is angry and the other person who's talking to them is also angry, right, the discussion will not go anywhere, right? It will be a stalemate, right? So we have to understand how to do this. Okay, and moving on to the next slide. On a brighter side, parenting is not actually a fixed concept. We all use all parenting styles, right? Permissive, neglectful, authoritative. We all use this in various degrees. But sometimes we just stick on to one aspect of parenting more than the other. Okay, and we can change. That is the best part of being a human. We are always changing and evolving. So once we learn the nuances which actually go on to making that change, okay, life can be a lot better for us, for the developing child, right? Especially now, it is very important because India in the future will have the most working population. Okay, that means the current adolescents who we are raising will actually form the future of the country. Okay, we will be the leading workforce in the world. Okay, so developing them or actually encouraging them in the proper way or channelizing them in the proper way becomes imperative for us as parents, as society, as a country. Okay, so now this is just a meme which I found funny. Okay, so my mom says I cannot go out at night, just sneak out. No thanks, I choose life, right? So strict parents actually raise either sneaky children who actually are brazen enough to actually override their authority and go with their own way, or they're too scared to explore anything, right? So what do you think we can do about this? Yes, we have a response in the chat. We being Indian parents, most of us are overprotective and scared of failures. We do not want our kids to face failures. The resulting parenting behavior is overprotection, right? Very true. If the all of us want our kids to succeed, but is life that way? Does life work that way? Always success and no failure, right? It will not work that way. We don't let them choose, right? So what can we do to elevate this situation? Now we know where the friction area is, right? Where there is a sense of, right? We can actually, we have identified this area of friction. So how can we mend this from your ideas? Anyone can actually put out ideas as to how we can actually help them. Just believe in them and be with them.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
If I may say, I think believing in a higher power, sometimes going with the flow of life, everybody is on a journey. So children are also on their journey and they will have their highs and lows, and they will also, so understanding and believing in being hopeful of a brighter future.
Yes,
and believing in a higher power is, I think, something which helps me as a mother, I would say.
Yes, ma'am. So that's a good thing. Having hope or faith in the divine. Okay, someone who is there above us who can actually help us in the process. So that's one. What else, as humans, can we do? Right. So what do you think we can do about this?
Helping them be independent and letting them make mistakes and learning from their own mistakes and just being with them, accepting them.
So acceptance with hope and acceptance with hope will help. We don't want children to face the consequences we think is a bad decision. By enlightening the parents with better approaches, right?
I think we have to make them experience both good and bad, sir. It is not, life is not always bed of roses, as
Yes,
we
ma'am.
know.
Yes, ma'am.
I think
Very
if
true.
they do mistakes, we have to enable them learn and how to bounce back. That would help in every situation, I would say, sir. It is
Yes, ma'am.
starting from falling down while playing until choosing a career for their life, that happens. For example, recently, I would say my boy from school yesterday, they had a lockdown and they did not go to school for a long time, since a month. And yesterday he went just a trial, and he felt like some of his friends were not really being nice, to talk and smile. So he just came back and told me that they are mean. Mean for a 5-year-old is too big a word.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't know what he means by that word, but he said they are mean to me. And then I said, maybe they were not in the good mood today. When you go on another day, they will smile at you. He was happy. So,
Okay.
in a way, I'm trying my best, sir. It is not that that is the right thing to tell, but what I tried was that I don't want to blame the other kid to him. At the same time, I also have to respect what he felt,
Yes, ma'am.
I can't say that the boy was nice, only you just felt mean, that kind of thing I want to do. So in that way, I think I'm trying to practice, helping them to bounce back, even if it is a not so
Yes,
good
ma'am.
thing. So, thank you.
So now we'll move on to the next slide. So how do we bridge this gap? So here are a few things which you can see. Okay, so providing them with a safe space, respecting them as individuals, okay, spending quality time with them, setting boundaries, and being open to negotiations, right? How many of you think all these are possible with adolescents when you're talking to them or dealing with them? How many of you think doing these in a practice or as a daily routine can actually help, right? Yeah, it's easy, yes, it's possible, right? So what do we mean when we talk about a safe space, right? So what is our understanding of a safe space? So can anyone say what is a safe space? How many of you have experienced this safe space somewhere?
Respecting each other's personal boundaries, sir. Private space.
Yes, ma'am. That will be under boundaries, but what's a safe space when we're talking about it? We have a response from the chat. Space where we can be honest with each other. Yes.
Me, safe space is like you have your space to communicate what you think to the other person. If you have a person who can listen to you, you feel you are the right person. That's what I feel as a safe space. Because if you don't want to share something to a person, then that you're not feeling secured about that place.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I understand about safe space.
Yeah. So safe space is, as you guys, all of you said, okay, there were a lot of responses in the chat also. So
Safe space for me, sir, would be what I experienced in my childhood, where
Yes,
I could talk anything to my father and mother. If I bunked my class in college also, I could come back and say I bunked and went for a movie with my friends. And it was told, okay, fine, with whom you went, you just tell us, and you came back safe. You didn't go to anything place that was wrong. Those I asked, but then it was okay that I bunked and went. It was not why you went, why you missed class, nothing like that. And I was very free to come and tell them, I told this to the boy in my class, my senior, I did this. So it was a very safe this thing where I could. And my childhood, if I could do that, experience that, I'm sure today's parents should be able to do that.
Yes, ma'am. Very true, ma'am. So a safe space, when we talk about it, is nothing very special. It's a place where a person is safe to be who they are. They don't have to wear a mask. Okay, they don't have to portray to be themselves to be someone else, but they can be who they are. Okay, tell what's on their mind without judgments or restrictions. Right. In most cases, when we see, as as children, when we were growing up, okay, certain situations we were afraid to tell our parents certain things or ask them certain things. right? So, for example, during adolescence, attraction towards the opposite sex is normal, right? But how many of adolescents feel safe to talk about this to their parents, right? Or even the development of secondary sexual characters, a bodily change also. How many of the children actually feel safe to talk to their parents about it, right? So that is the safe space we have to create for them to be able to express even the silliest things. Okay, as ma'am said, okay, even if you bunk classes or if you did something, were you able to come to your parents and tell them openly that okay, I did this? Okay, and when you are met with a non-judgmental attitude, okay, where you are not judged, but okay, the information is taken as it is, but you are also helped in the process as to what you can do and cannot do, right? Being reasonable and providing the safe space, okay, that is the first and foremost thing. And for a safe space to be created, we need trust. Okay, when either of the party doesn't trust, okay, because it is a bipartite process, and when there is not a trust involved in it, okay, we don't have a safe space, right? A child will not talk to the parent if they feel insecure or if they feel threatened about it, where the trust is lost, right? Second one is respecting each other. Okay, we respect them as individuals, as our children. Okay, we don't impose, but we respect them for who they are and their individuality. We don't want them to be a mirror images of us, right? We want them to be better than us. But whatever the child wants and wants to be, it has to be respected. The child has to be respected as an individual, as a whole. Okay, not just parts. Okay, I will respect this part of you and not respect the other part. No, respect is a holistic process, right? We understand and accept the person as they are. Okay, and spending quality time. Okay, why is it important more than ever now in the current scenario or the information age? Why is it very important spending quality time?
I think it's important to teach them the social element in life. If you don't
Yes, ma'am.
talk to them and understand what they really feel, and
Mhm.
I think they will learn from home only how to talk to the other people. So if you don't
Okay.
spend time talking to them, they don't understand.
Yes, that's one. Anything else? Parents,
Distraction by gadgets, sir.
pardon, ma'am. Can you
They
come
are
again?
getting distracted. No, they are getting distracted by gadgets and other
Very true,
things.
ma'am. No matter how many gadgets or how much of social media you have, nothing replaces a parent, correct, or a primary caregiver. Your role cannot be outsourced to something or someone. Okay, so our presence in the life of children, whether they are adolescents or infants or children, our presence matters continuously, right? So spending quality time with them also lets us know what we are interested in. Okay, in many cases, this quality time actually gives an enlightenment to the parents as to what their child can be, what their child is interested in, and it lets them see their world from the child's perspective, right? You actually go into the world of the child when you are actually involved with them in activities, right? Most parents want their child to actually go out physically play. Okay, if the child is an introvert, he may not be interested in that. Instead, he might actually prefer playing with building blocks inside the house. That's completely fine, right? But if you are playing along with the child, okay, the child knows that okay, my parent is actually taking an interest in what I like, right? So that creates a bonding, okay, and that bonding will actually lead to trust building, right? And more than any other era in this information time where both parents are working, it becomes very crucial for us to be present in the child's life, right? No matter all said and done, as we said, technology cannot replace a parent, right? And setting boundaries, okay, that is a very crucial part of this. Okay, an exercise which we have to do continuously. So boundaries have to be respected and created, right? uh, yeah, so setting boundaries, we have to be reasonable when we are setting boundaries. Okay, boundaries uh, indicate that we are setting things which we will not accept from the other person, and the other person also says what they can and cannot do, right? So it's a practice wherein we all set limitations to us, what we can and cannot do. Okay, deal breaker. or what is tolerable and not tolerable, right? Especially with children. Okay, suppose a child actually engages in substance abuse, we can set a boundary saying, these kind of behaviors of substance abuse, or smoking, okay, or frequent bunking of classes is not acceptable. You can bunk classes, but yeah, you cannot be frequently bunking at the sacrificing your education in the process. Okay, so setting reasonable boundaries, okay, as parents, as children, both sides, we have to set boundaries, and we have to negotiate that process, right? We cannot arbitrarily impose boundaries on people, right? It has to be accepted by both parties, wherein both of them get a win-win situation. Okay, that's the last part of this. Okay, so understanding and setting boundaries, setting clear boundaries, okay, communicating those boundaries, and gaining acceptance for those boundaries, right? So that is a very crucial part. So put all these together, and we can actually bring a successful change in parenting practices, right? So yeah, establishing a safe space free of judgment, trust and respect for each other, spending quality time, boundaries, and negotiation. Okay, these are certain basic techniques which we can do or use to actually facilitate the developmental process of children in general. So with this, I would like to conclude my presentation. So if anyone has any clarifications or questions, I'd be happy to take them up.
So very much, Vivian sir. It was very nice and more engaging. Personally, I liked it so much. I think it's the same way the other participants would have loved it too.
Thank you,
So
ma'am.
now, though we had discussions during the session, now I request the participants to ask your question to the resource person, or if you would like to share some thoughts on parenting or whatever you feel like, please be open for the next few minutes, and then we can wind up. Any voices we have to hear?
Or
Please
even in the
welcome.
chat box. Yeah, as you said, I think in the chat box also we are saying nobody is perfect, right? We learn, right? That's what makes human beings so what is it, special, right? We learn from experiences. Okay, as Darwin said, it is not the most strongest, okay, or the most intelligent creature which survives, but the one which is adaptable to change, right? So we adapt, we change, right? So human beings, though not perfect, we learn, right? So there is still hope for humanity.
Thank you so much for a wonderful session, Mr. Vivian. Really enjoyed, and as Chandra ma'am was saying, that it was very interactive and thought-provoking, I would say. And I think beautifully you elucidated that no parenting style is perfect, in the sense we keep oscillating depending upon time and situation. And like what you're summing it up as saying that, Darwin's theory that we need to be adapting to change. I'm reminded of Winnicott here, who talks about good enough parenting. He's given this concept of good enough parenting, and I think that's what we all are. We keep changing, going with the
Yes, ma'am.
flow, sometimes making mistakes, like as Chandra ma'am was beautifully narrating her experience and sharing, and her response to her child was very nice. But still, parents are unsure. I think that's the journey, because we are parents for the first time, So I think we are on our own journeys. So thank you so much. It's been an enlightening session. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And we have a few questions in the chat box. Okay, so what is your personal experience of parenting? Can you shed light on it, on your personal experience? Okay, I'm a bachelor, so I don't have kids, so I cannot talk from that, but I can relate a few concepts from my own experiences from my childhood. So can you be a little more specific, sir, as to what you meant by that question? I think Ronald sir is that. Yeah. And moving on, subsequently, the next question is letting go of children. Is it part of parenting? Yes, I think that is a very crucial part because children need to explore in their life. They cannot be, caged or limited to a certain blinders which we have, right? So letting go of children is essential, but for that letting go to successfully happen, we have to actually give them necessary skills to actually be successful on their own. So the letting go has to be bolstered by imparting of essential skills which are required for survival. Relationship between parents and children. Yes, all of us, I think, predominantly have experienced our parents when we felt they were being unreasonable. Right? On hindsight, we might think that as being, maybe they were right, but at that time, during the developmental phase, we sometimes feel that okay, maybe they are being unreasonable to my demands, or they are just arbitrarily chiding me off. Okay, things like that. Common recurring experiences across people. Right? Most of us would have had some experience like that. So yeah. And anything else? Most of the parents in India are adopting narrow approach to being authoritarian. Yes. So if it's okay, I would like to stop my slide sharing. So yes, coming back to the questions. Where is it? Yeah. Mass revolution starts with small steps. So we as individuals, we start the change. Okay, be the change you want to be. You want to see, right? We start changing, and the world will change automatically. Okay, there is no secret spell wherein we can suddenly bring out a mass change. No. It has to be an individual process where we practice it ourselves, and we pass on this knowledge to the next generation. Right? That is how humanity has survived. We pass on the successful knowledge. Okay, whatever successful techniques we have had or acquired through this generation is passed on to the next. Right? So we acquire those skills, we pass it on to the next generation. That's how we can bring about a change. So yeah. Anything else?
I think we are done with the questions in the box.
Yes,
and I should say it is really overflooded with a very positive feedback for you, Mr. Vivian, today.
Thank you, ma'am.
Appreciations also from me. I liked your session very much. And now it's time to honor you with gratitude. And now I request Mr. Deepan, our core team member, to say a few words about your session and give his things. Deepan, are you there?
Can see him.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, now you're audible, Deepan.
Okay, I'm sorry, my microphone was having a problem. So, yeah. Mr. Vivian, I have to say that special appreciation to the topic you have chosen, partners to parents, and I would like to appreciate the fact that you had started from infancy and you had brought it all up to adulthood, that is parenting. So it's like full circle. You have come to full circle, and you've let us know about so much information. This is like these. I've seen this book. It's called Herlock. He had written this book on developmental psychology, and it's like this thick. It's almost as if you've taken all of the important points from Herlock and beautifully given us a view of all that you need to know about developmental psychology, starting from infancy to the stages we go through and up to parenting, which is something a need of the hour, because everyone today is lost, especially as someone had rightly pointed out with regard to gadgets. So all of this technology is changing the world, and the topic that you have taken today was really, really wonderful. And the activities, and love the amount of charisma that you've built, because everyone was so interactive and engaged in this session. And hats off to you in taking the flow. With regard to the flow of the session, it was impeccable. I have to say that, and the content, the delivery was all marvelous. And I have to specially appreciate your the wonderful examples that you have given. The examples are so down to earth and easy to relate with. That is something that usually people find it difficult to do. We always go for textbook examples, but it was all like real life experiences, and it's very I have to say it's very um, um, it's so surprising that you're not married because it's almost as if you speak from experience. Got to say, it was really wonderful. And we hope to listen more from you. And we thank all of the participants for the amount of interactiveness that you have shown, the questions, your and your contribution, especially Muttu, Shabnam, and a lot of others, I have to say. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for the wonderful opportunity to learn and to share. So thank you, everyone, and Mr. Vivian. Thank you.
So I'd like to actually thank the organizing committee for giving me an opportunity to actually do this webinar. So I personally felt it was a little bit of an information overload because I tried covering a lot of information in just one session, which was actually a little bit of an overstretch. So if it was a little taxing, I do apologize for that. So thank you everyone for actually making this session interactive, because without the participation of all the participants, this session would have actually been a little more dull. So I would actually appreciate and thank all the participants for actually making this session an interactive one. So thank you everyone.
Thank you so much. Even to me, I felt like it ended so soon, Mr. Vivian. So please don't take it that way. You have placed it so well within the given time. Thank you so much, and to have you on some other session soon again. Thank you everyone who have been present in this evening, and see you all tomorrow in another link, the same time in another session. Bye bye. Good night.